Assalamu alaikum. My name is Salim Siddiqui, and you're watching a HotConflict.com video series. And we're talking about Eid, the great celebration of the Muslims today, and the fact that Muslims all over the world gathered together with their families and went to pray in congregation and bow their heads to the Lord Most High, and what that means, and understanding what is the importance of this celebration, and that Muslims from all over the world, Muslims meaning those who believe in the Lord Most High and submit to His will, are gathered together in Mecca, in the Arabian Peninsula, to go to the house of God there to worship the Lord. And we're telling the story of the meaning of all these things. And we started with the very beginning of the creation of Adam and the war between mankind and the jinn. And then we talked about the fact that there are certain fundamentals of faith. Now, the fundamentals of faith are always going to be the fundamentals. They never change. There is a Lord Most High. None is worthy of worship except for Him. To this earth He has sent prophets and messengers with books and revelation, guiding people to the truth, and He will continue to do this until the end of days. For man is on a mission and at war with the other races and with the good and evil of our own selves. I've often not talked about that since we've been talking so much about fighting the evil Satan and his minions, the interdimensional beings or the smokeless fire creatures of God that have free will and are different from angels in this cosmic galactic war that is going on and has been going on since the very first day. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go back and look at some of the beginning parts and you'll see the reference to Adam and then the destruction of the world at the time of Noah when there was no longer any believers in God, and then going down through the ages to the point where we're talking about Abraham. And Abraham had gotten to the point that he's considered the pillar of the faith and gotten to the point where he knew that it was his duty to establish the faith on the earth. He wanted to make sure that under no circumstance ever again would the world lose the faith in the Lord Most High. In Arabic we term that Allah, meaning the God, the capital G-O-D. And so Ibrahim was on this mission. But like we said, oftentimes the story is difficult and the war is tough. And just as much as there's a war going on with the other races and Satan, there's a war going on within our own race and fighting within our own selves to search out for that truth. Now, Ibrahim was obviously guided and didn't have a problem searching out the truth, but oftentimes trials and tribulations of life are there. And it's important to mention here that all of the prophets, Adam telling us about the war and what's to come, Noah and all the prophets all the way down, Abraham, Moses, David, Solomon, Jesus, Muhammad, all of the prophets warned us of the coming battle and the trials and tribulations of the end of days. I mean, it is well known amongst our texts in Islam meaning the submission to the one true Lord, from the Quran, the book of the Muslims, and the statements of the Prophet, that even the Prophet Noah warned his people at that time that remember to believe in the Lord Most High, because at the end of times there will be trials and tribulations and false prophets who come to deceive you. False prophets that come to deceive you. And so Ibrahim wanted to establish once and for all and be a pillar on this earth so that belief in the Lord Most High is never again gone. And he knew that the best way to do that was to have righteous offspring. And he begged to have righteous children. But unfortunately, as the tests and tribulations that all the prophets faced, and as all mankind faces, his wife, blessed be her name, Sarah in Arabic, a virtuous and pious woman, was destined with the trial. And no matter how much she wanted, she could not bear children. She couldn't bear children, and she was growing so old. And Ibrahim wanted nothing more than to be able to raise a family and teach them the truth of the Lord. He knew that this is the way of our people. This is the truth, and the way God created Adam and our mother, for us to bind ourselves in family with husband and wife and wives and having more children. And here's a common misconception, since we're talking on the hotconflict.com website, since I'm mentioning it right here. Polygamy has always been the case and always been the practice amongst all of the people. Only now, recently, is it considered a taboo. But we know that Ibrahim wanted more than anything else to have a son, to carry on the faith. But Sarah, God bless her, she just could not bear children. And we know one of the stories, and it's important, when Ibrahim went to the foreign lands. And since we're talking about the strange stories, and I have to bring you the truth, and you have to see some of the signs and hear it and listen. And if you're paying attention and you're searching for the truth, there is a chance that the way I'm telling the story just might make you think. Abraham went to go see who? One of the great kings. Nimrud in Arabic, Nimrod in English. And we call somebody a Nimrod. Why? Well, there's an important reason behind that. Abraham went to go to the king and tell him, I am a believer in the Lord Most High, and here you have this amazing civilization. Why is it that you don't believe in the true God? Don't you know that we are all the children of Adam and we are at war? You must believe in the true God, otherwise we will all be destroyed. And the Nimrod says what? What does your God do? Abraham says, my God is the one who takes life and gives life. He's God. He's God. He's the one who made you. Ibrahim was trying to say, it's obvious. Don't you know what I'm talking about? I mean, come on, it's so basic. Don't you understand the truth? There's God. Don't you believe in God? He's the one who made you. He gives life, and then when he decides you die, only God does that. But the Nimrod, he says what? I can decide to give life and take life, arrogantly, as if because he's the leader of his people, he can decide to kill one of them or let them live. It's stupid, right? The stupidity of a Nimrod, right? Exactly why we have this tale in your vocabulary, right? Are you understanding what I'm trying to do by telling you the story in a way that you might just be able to get it in English? And so the Nimrod says, I can do that. I'm a god just like anybody else. The world again was corrupt and deceived and disbelieving and believing all kinds of arrogant things. Ibrahim puts the next challenge, important fundamental in this story and the plot line, so pay attention, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. Ibrahim says this challenge, as the leader of the pious, as the leader of the believers of the one true Lord, Ibrahim places the final challenge of faith to the king and says, my God is the one who rises the sun in the east and sets it in the west. Can you make it rise from the west? Ooh, it's pretty deep stuff, right? Just boom, there he goes, snap! It's there in the story and we've all heard it. If you've paid attention to your scriptures and your stories, then it's there, right? Muslims have all this stuff too. And so obviously a point is made. Now, we have the knowledge that Sarah is unable to have children. And so Ibrahim is presented with the total agreement of Sarah, a slave woman, who is a pious woman. And her name is Hagar. In Arabic we call her Hajara. And Ibrahim wants more than anything else what? To have children. And Sarah is unable to bear children. And Ibrahim is begging God, "Oh Allah, Lord Most High, the one who has created us and placed us here on this earth, and the one who has sent me to establish your truth on the land. Please bless me with a child." And so Sarah agrees to let Ibrahim marry Hagar. And by the blessing of God, as the only one who truly does give life and create a soul, Ishmael, or Ismail, is born. Now, since we agreed that we're talking about strange concepts, if you study modern day ufology or alien study, which I would term jinn study, then you can see that many of the people who have communicated with the other races have clear knowledge that the jinn have tried to create other jinns. But they've been unable to, because anytime they've done cloning and other kinds of methods that now some of the warped-minded mankind are trying to think of, the aliens have already attempted that. But every time they've attempted it, what? Go look up the material. The aliens have attempted to use technology to create cloning, to create other races like themselves. But they're never able to create a soul. And so you never have actual life. Subhanallah. Allah is the only one who gives life. Again, directly in the story of Ibrahim is both the challenge of life and believing in God, and the challenge of modern day times that we're seeing with the other jinn races right now. I told you the story was going to get weird. Ismail. Like we said, every time God gives a blessing, a test comes about. Not because God is evil, a'udhu billah. Praise be to the Lord. But in all of this story, that you're supposed to understand the history of man and be connected to this, all of this is for your education. So Ibrahim is challenged and tested. As soon as his son, the thing that he desires most, the most precious thing to him in the world, everything that he has begged the Lord Most High for, everything that he wants, everything that he wants is in this boy that has just been born. And some scholars talk about some of the tension between Hagar and Sarah and the amount of love that Abraham had for this son, because he had so much dreams for Ismail, his firstborn. Yes, from the slave woman who he had married. What a noble honor, and she was a pious, believing woman, just like Sarah was, but Sarah was unfortunately unable to have children. And so Ismail is the apple of his eye. What a hard situation. And Allah, the Most High, orders Ibrahim as a test to go take Ismail, or Ishmael, to the deserts in the middle of nowhere, in a valley that has nothing, nothingness. And go take your wife, Hagar, and your son Ishmael, and go leave them there. And that's your commandment. Oh Allah, my whole life I'm begging for a son, and you want me to go and leave him in the desert? Ibrahim is having such a hard time with this. And the next day, he makes the provisions and tells his wife, "Come, we're going." Where are we going? We're going. Where are we going? She's got a brand new baby. All of a sudden, they're just getting up and going? Where are we going? He doesn't even want to answer her. What is he supposed to say? What's he supposed to say to her? Is a wife and a baby? This is Ibrahim. He's thinking my whole life mission is supposed to be able to raise the best family. And now the Lord Most High wants me to go take my son and drop him in the middle of nowhere? Doesn't answer her. Like I said, Hagar was just not any other woman. She was the mother of Ibrahim's firstborn. After asking him once or twice, she realizes, all right, something serious going on. She says, "Has Allah ordered you to do something?" And he says, yes, that's it. That's all we need to know. She's a believer in the truth. She knew straight away the truth is the truth. When the believer knows the truth, they know it. Because the truth sets you free. And you're not subservient to anybody. And you don't do what anybody else tells you except from the truth of the Lord. You have no other false gods. You worship the one Lord. And you submit to only what He wishes for you. So there, in a place, in the middle of nowhere, Ibrahim leaves his wife and his new baby with nothing. Nothing. Mountain of Safa and Marwa. Ibrahim is gone and returning, and Hagar and the baby are there in the middle of the desert with absolutely nothing. They have the trust of God, but Hagar's starting to freak out because it's hot. They're in the desert. They're nowhere. Ishmeal, he's crying. I mean, he's a young baby. She leaves him on the dirt, on the sand, and she starts running from mountain to mountain. Mountain Safa to Mountain Marwa. Looking from hill to hill to try and see, like, maybe there's a caravan, maybe somebody's coming by. I need to figure out some way of getting help, because if we stay here in the middle of the desert with absolutely no water, we're dead. But like any of the stories, in the stories of the truth, when the truth is told to you from your Lord, it's not a fake superpower. It's not a false truth. It's not a misdirection. It's always the plain truth. And God is God. When He wants something, it's just be and it is, right? So Hagar is freaking out mountain to mountain, trying to figure out how she's going to put up with it and begging God to show her mercy. And Ishmeal, the blessed son of Abraham, is kicking his foot to the ground and crying because he's thirsty. Hagar is so thirsty that she's worried that she won't have milk to feed her baby. And as the blessing of Allah and a miracle, and one of the fundamental parts of the story that you gotta understand is that water springs forth from the earth at the foot of Ishmeal. Water, the most blessed of all things. Water. That which we are all created with. Water. That which the other races are also created with. Water. That which the other galaxies that we're searching for have. And the people of knowledge who are not telling you know that there is water. That which Allah showed you in the signs with the prophet Noah. That if you abuse the earth, that which you were created from water can destroy you. Be and it is. And that is the Lord Most High, not some other fake God. So Ishmeal and Hagar survive and establish themselves in a small little town that's called Becca. And as we now know in modern times, that's called Mecca. And caravans came, and because water is the source of all life, and a beautiful blessing of a spring of pure water was given to them by God, the holy city of Mecca was created. And so it was that some time later, some years later, when Ishmeal was almost a teenager, that Abraham returned from his home in the east, in the western parts of the desert, towards the Arabian Peninsula again, from his wife Sarah to come, because God told him it was time to go to where he had left his son, the one that he had no knowledge of what had even happened to him, except that God had ordered that there they should go. And of course, God is the one who provides and no one else. Well, Ibrahim goes because Allah orders him. Now, he still has only one son, and this is a fundamental part of the story. And now that he goes and sees his son is alive and beautiful and blessed, and of all things miraculous, his wife Hagar and his son believe in the one true Lord, and they have not been misguided. Ibrahim finds the apple of his eye and is returned with the joy and the love of his son. And once again, God tests him. Now is your ultimate test. You claim to want to be the one to establish the true faith of mankind and establish the firm belief of the reality and the truth of the human race and all the blood or children of Adam. And then now comes your test. You want to be the father of the rest of the God-believing? Then sacrifice your son. And Ibrahim just does not get it anymore. I mean, this cannot be happening again. Again? Now, to say when I talk that I might use some explicit terms and let go of my emotions, and I mean this with all due respect as any person who understands Islam and the meaning of a person who understands the truth, and to believe that when we talk about the messengers, all of them from Adam on down, who all received the noble truth, we respect all of them as Muslims. Each and every one of them we believe in as a fundamental of our faith, and you will never find a Muslim talking with any of the prophets in a way that is disrespectful, or suggesting that any of them did ever anything that was immoral. But there is no doubt that one must acknowledge the dramatic events that Allah had destined for them, and what it means to actually understand the destiny of the story of our race and who you are. You wanted to know the truth, so by Allah, I'm going to give it to you. This cannot be happening again. And so there, in an area that we now know as Mina, in the place Ibrahim was walking when Allah commanded him to sacrifice his son, that which he had planned his whole life and the future of our struggle as a race on. And it was that time where it's very clear. Satan, the head of the alien race, the shape-shifting draconian Ifrit, major frackin' alternate dimension smoke fire being that we've been talking about, comes to him and whispers to him. As we know, they have the ability to do mental manipulation, and whispers to him, saying, "Are you going to believe your Lord?" Once again, I remind you of the chain and the story. Remember what your father Adam has taught you. They will lie to you. They will lie to you. And the worst of all lies of the alien race, or Satan and his minions, is that they lie about God. They lie about God, and that is pure evil. "Don't sacrifice your son," he said. And for a moment, Ibrahim let the manipulation enter his mind. And when he realized it was happening, he said a prayer and picked up a pebble and threw it to try and cast out the demon that he knew was present. Right? He knew that one of the other aliens was there. And so he picked up a stone and threw it at it where he sensed it. And it's very clear that that is the narration. And then he continued on his journey. And once again, the invisible reptilian came to him again and whispered to his mind, manipulating him. And when he heard it, he asked God to protect him from the evil whispering of Satan, our accursed enemy. And again, he threw a stone at where he sensed it. All this is there in the history, people. All this is there. And then he walked further again. And a third time again, these other dimensional beings whispered towards him, and he heard it again. And he asked Allah to protect him, the Most High. And he took a stone again and threw it at where he thought it was. At this time he got to his son, and he told his son of what Allah had shown him and revealed in his mind. And when his son heard this, he said, "O Father, if it is from the Lord Most High, then you'll find me accepting and patient." See, one of the true symbols of the people who understand the truth, when they all really understand, okay, you've got the truth and you understand that there is a God and that you are getting messengership from God, and they believed. We're talking about the time of the prophets. We're talking about the time of the people who had the purity of that light of the soul that God breathed into Adam. We're talking about that blessing that is upon each and every messenger that Allah has sent. And we know from the narration that there's thousands and thousands of them throughout all the earths, to all of mankind and all of the race. God always sends prophets. And for this are clear the stories and signs for us to understand the truth. And so we find Ishmeal saying to his father, "You will find me steadfast and holding on to whatever is God's command." Straight away believing the truth again. That type of character of faith that is the blessing of those of great status. Already showing the importance of Ishmeal as what? Ibrahim's prayer that his children, man, they were going to be hardcore, never forgetting who they were. They were the children of Ibrahim. They believed in the Lord Most High. They were not going to forget that there is only one God. And so we know the story. Right before Ibrahim is about to sacrifice Ishmeal on the altar, Allah, in the power that He is, in controlling all of the universe and anything in here, He changes Ishmeal to a lamb, a sacrificial lamb. Right? And this practice is an example of sacrificing for the sake of Allah, for the sake of God. That animals can be sacrificed and eaten, and there's blessing in that. And this is also one of the other things, since we talk about some of these spiritual and Eastern philosophies that always say that you have to be a non-meat eater. Well, we know that is not true. Meat, like anything else, should be taken in moderation, and of course it affects your body, but it is not something that is prohibited. It is not something that is prohibited. And all of the prophets were shown to eat meat, and so it must be said, we have specifically the sacrificing of the lamb, and Ishmeal, as we know, was obviously saved. And this story is there in Islam, in the Quran, and the statements of the Prophet, and many of the other religions that have still managed to preserve some of these tales in their text. Now, as we know, the Quran is there and preserved, and we'll get to that later on in the story when we talk about the importance of some of the books. But we get to a major fundamental, that Ibrahim is now proved, and his son is established as, yes, this line of blood will forever be upon the path, and there is nobleness and greatness in remembering that line, and that from then on, the actual true faith would never be wiped out off the face of the earth. Ibrahim's oath to God and God's promise to Ibrahim was established. And Ishmeal was going to be one of the noble believers in the true faith. And Abraham and Ishmeal built a house to worship the Lord Most High in the city that we call Mecca, that still exists today. But as we said in the family situations, the plot always thickens. Inshallah, it's time to stop for today. Take a break.